Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, you can tell by my face, it's another victory to talk about. I mean, let's just ignore what happened in Slovenia and that terrible night in Maribor. And actually, it's been alright. 3 victories and a draw in the Premier League under Antonio Conte. It's getting somewhere. You can see on the pitch little things that he wants to happen that are starting to happen. It's not perfect, and certainly the standard of the opposition hasn't been incredibly high in the last couple of games, although, Brentford have been playing well at points this season. And you could argue that, especially with Brentford, Spurs really restricted them to barely any chances. Against Norwich, Norwich had a couple of, I'd say, quite decent chances that, a better team probably would have put away. But it's victories. And I feel like Tottenham, especially going forward, we're seeing a lot of good things. Lots of positive stuff to talk about. I'm also going to talk about Hugo Lloris and his contract situation as well. And if I get time at the end, I'm going to try and talk about some of the players out on loan. But yeah, we've got loads of stuff to talk about. Talk about press conferences as well. Some more really good ones from Antonio Conte's. I must say, as a journalist, really, really enjoying what he has to say. And I think I caught him slightly off guard in the press conference after yesterday's match, which was no bad thing and just showed exactly how he deals with it. And I'm going to maybe catch you guys all off guard as well, guys and girls. And let's start with Ben Davies. That's exactly what I did to Conte last night, so why shouldn't you guys get exactly the same? I should clarify what I mean when I kind of chucked that at Conte yesterday. What exactly happens in a Zoom press conference? Because pre-match, we're back to in-person press conferences, which is really great. And, you get that kind of face-to-face time with the manager, which is so much better. However, after the match, technically in the Premier League now, it's still over Zoom. So what you have to do, if you're not aware, if you maybe I'm trying to think what a normal Zoom meeting, I don't know, whether you'd require this function or not. But in a press conference, you have to press the raise hand button, which is, exactly what it says on the tin. So I had very much set in my mind, I wanted to ask about Ben Davies, because if you didn't see yesterday, Ben Davies was superb. He was so good. And I think that's kind of continuing a bit of a trend under Conte. So I decided, right, I'm going to ask about Ben Davies. I've been writing pieces in recent weeks about how, he really was made for the left-sided role of this back three in a similar way to Cesar Azpilicueta was in the Chelsea team, which Conte won the title with. And I kind of had prepared, I was going to say that, but didn't want to be first, because if you haven't noticed in a press conference, normally the first question is very generic. It has to be what did you think of the match, Antonio? That kind of question. And I was like, okay, don't want to be doing that one. So I deliberately waited for 3 or 4 other people to put their hands up digitally, and then I'd put mine up. You do run the risk of, especially with how long Conte talks in his answers, of maybe missing out on a question, but I thought I'm going to take the risk because I think I want to chuck in right at the end this question about Davies. And Ant, the Tottenham Hotspur kind of head press officer, opened a press conference and he went, okay, and we'll start with Alistair Gold. And I was like, oh man. And I thought, no, I'm not going to ask a boring generic question. I want to ask this question. So I apologised to Conte and I said, look, congratulations on a win, Antonio, but I'm sorry to kind of throw what is probably not your normal question you'd have at the start of a press conference, and said, essentially, I'm really interested to know what you think about Ben Davies. And, he actually did compare him to Cesar Azpilicueta, which was like, when you're a journalist and you've been writing these things, to hear the actual manager say that I didn't use the word Cesar Azpilicueta. I didn't say that at any point. That was purely came from him. So to kind of hear something you've written then be confirmed by the manager, it's a bit like cha-ching. It's very nice. So what he actually said about Ben Davies is, you're right. You're right, because Ben is playing very well, and I think that role specifically, I can get the best out of him. And it happened the same with Azpilicueta. I think the 3 central defenders, it's important to be good defensively, but at the same time for me, it's important to play football, to play and have personality and play the ball. Also, when you find a team that's defending very low, it's very important in this system. I need players with personality to play the ball and also to be offensive. Ben is one of these players. He shows great solidity, plays well defensively, and I'm happy for him. We're talking about a really good person, a good guy. He's always really focused and concentrated, and he played well today. So what I should clarify is this whole kind of idea of the back three and on the left, because I tweeted during the game yesterday something about how how it should be noted how well he's playing in this role, and he brings this kind of attacking attacking element to it as well. And oh my goodness, some Welsh fans, must have been one, I would say, fan of the Welsh football team or Welsh football in general. Someone picked it up and decided to educate me that that wasn't Welsh, by the way. That was just a really stupid, weird kind of posh accent. Educate me in the fact that Ben Davies has been playing as a left-sided centre back for Wales for many years. I'm fully aware of that. I'm very, very much aware of that, and you will read many of my articles. I think going back to Mourinho times, have spoken about how he plays that role for Wales. But what I'm keen to stress, and the whole point of my tweet, and the whole point of the piece, and the whole point of talking to Conte was, it's not the same role, And I had someone even saying to me, how can you have a different role and the same position? And it's like, well, of course you can, because that's like saying every fullback is the same kind of player, every central midfielder is exactly the same kind of person, or they have exactly the same tasks. No. What? And I actually, and I think there was some accusations that and I think it was Jack Pitt-Brooke from The Athletic kind of got pulled into this because he'd written a bit about Ben Davies as well. And we got pulled into this, you haven't even bothered to watch Welsh football or international football to know how he plays. And it's like, well, actually, not only have I watched a fair bit, because they have Spurs players, they've had Roden, and Davies, and obviously Bale as well. I've watched a lot of them because of that. But also, I go to people that have covered the team, like Sam Dean works for the Telegraph, who's very, very good, and he covers the national team. I even asked him, I wanted to check with him, the role that Ben Davies plays on the left of this back three for Wales. It's more of a kind of a solid defensive, stick in your position kind of, essentially, apart from set pieces, kind of centre back, isn't it? And he was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. The back three stay, and then it's about more the wing backs get forward. And this is where the huge difference is, because in Conte's system, the left-sided player in the back three is also an attacker. It's a little bit like, if you remember the Sheffield United centre-backs, you'd see them suddenly overlapping and getting into the box. So that's kind of what Ben Davies is asked to do. And this was my point, was that actually that role allows him to really get forward and show what he can do for, getting forward, as well as defend well. And, it was his flick on, wasn't it, from Son's corner for the ball dropped to Sanchez to score the second. And then he did that lovely 1-2 with Oliver Skipp, played it across to Sonny to score his goal for the third. And, I think he does it. You've heard me speak about Ben Davies before, and my frustration, I feel he's just the scapegoat. He's one of those who gets it. And, he's played 240 times for Tottenham. 242 appearances for Tottenham Hotspur across 7.5 years. He's always been there when Spurs have needed him. Always. He never whinges. I saw an interview with him a couple of weeks back when they were talking about, you remember there was this feeling that the second 11, there was almost a second 11 at Tottenham, went out and played the European games, and how, that lack of motivation and all of this. Ben Davies kind of came out and said, well, that might be the way for others, but not for me. I just want to play for this football club. I want to play football, and I will do my best. And he always does. And I think, just unfortunately, sometimes when results go against Tottenham, or things don't go the team's way, fans, understandably frustrated, but then they'll look at someone like Ben Davies and I see comments all over the place. It's like, he's not good enough, championship level, all this sort of stuff. And you think, all the players who maybe haven't been there for Spurs, or haven't given their all, or haven't turned up when they really needed them, and Ben Davies gets it. I don't like it. I don't really like that with any player, but especially someone like Ben Davies, who's such a clever, articulate chap who, he has everything has always been about Tottenham Hotspur for him, and kind of doing his best. And, it's no coincidence that whatever fans might say about him, Poch loved him. Jose Mourinho loved him. Nuno loved him. Conte really loves him now. And it's also quite telling that both Mourinho and Conte, two of the game's most successful managers, both specifically had roles in mind for Ben Davies. Whatever you think about sometimes when he makes the odd mistake, as all defenders do, And as always, of course, it's shown up more when you're a defender because you're often the last line of defence, hence the title. I just feel sorry for Ben Davies. I do, and I like the fact that he's going undergoing a little bit of a renaissance at the moment. I think someone called it a benaissance. I don't know if that will catch on, but someone said it on Twitter. Apologies, I can't remember who said it. Otherwise, I'd have given you a little thing. But yeah, a benaissance. Because, I think he's been really good in the role. I think, there's some people on Twitter joking he's the Welsh Maldini and all this sort of stuff now, but, this is what Conte says. I can get the best out of him, and Conte improves players. And let's say, for example, that, the people on Twitter who are saying that he's not one of the best, he's not one of the most talented, whatever, then Conte did exactly that with players who were kind of decreed to be that kind of player at Chelsea. He had a few players like that he then turned into really essential key people in his team, and maybe that's what Ben Davies is going to be. Perhaps, I think it's a great start. It's very early days, of course it is, and he is going to make mistakes, and there is tougher opposition to come, of course there is. But what have they kept? There's a fair bit. Is it 3 clean sheets? I'm trying to remember now. That's how quickly the games are going between, fast and furious the games come now. But, the clean sheets are being kept. And I think Ben Davies is playing a big role in that. And I'd just like to see him get a bit of praise, I think. And that for me is obviously partly asking the question as well, because it brings it to the maybe the consciousness of people that might not want to change their views. And I thought that was great. When he compared him to Azpilicueta, it was like, yeah, fantastic. That's exactly it. And, and he wasn't alone. Eric Dyer, I thought, had another good game. Eric Dyer, again, it's probably his best season in terms of consistency since probably the peak Poch years. Again, another player who gets it on social media. I see it all the time. Some people, I feel like, they just won't ever shake that belief. And, that's up to them, isn't it? But I see an Eric Dyer who I think has got a lot more solid and consistent in his play. He's been asked to play this playmaker role by Conte, which it works sometimes. I wouldn't say his distribution was always fantastic, but, certainly his defending has been a lot better. Davinson Sanchez was an interesting one. He started the game, I felt, a little bit shakily again, and I think the crowd maybe have a little bit less patience with him, and that showed. But he kind of grew as the game wore on. Thought he improved. And then when he scored, it was quite interesting. He looked really angry. I don't know whether that was in response to the crowd's kind of... I don't know how to put it, because it's not like the crowd were booing him, jeering, anything like that. It's just nervousness, I think is probably the best way to say it. When he does make a mistake, like, that kind of moment. And when he scored, he just looked really angry. Just stared at Eric Dyer. It was a really kind of look he gave him. And everyone around was kind of banging into him and celebrating with him. And it was almost like, I don't know whether he was angry. I don't know whether he was just trying to be ice cool, that kind of thing. Or whether he just doesn't score much, so he didn't really know how to celebrate. I don't know. But it kind of took him a moment. And eventually he looked up and he kind of made like a baby signal up to the crowd. I presume his wife, I think his wife and son were up there. But yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. It just kind of shows... He didn't celebrate wild, and it was an important goal. It was kind of the second goal that pretty much killed off Norwich's spirit, really. That was really probably the defining goal. But yeah, again, another clean sheet. Yes, 100% agree with those people that say Norwich had their chances, had some good chances that they had a better attacking options, probably would have put them away. But still, there's, Conte keeps using the word solid base and foundations, and I think that's what it is. He's getting there. He's trying to build it up. There will be gaffes, there will be errors, there will be mistakes. These players can't transform overnight, but you can see what he's trying to do, and it's all about them learning the system and learning how to play it. And I thought there's a lot of positives to be taken out of that as well. And interestingly, for anyone wondering, I asked Conte about Joe Rodon on Friday in the press conference. I just wanted to know, really, that, with Christian Romero's injury, it was another one of those where I was kind of trying to confirm a story that I'd written. So I'd written in the past, I think I may have said it on the video before, that from what I understand that Joe Rodon is competing with Eric Dyer for that central slot. So I kind of, to try and get such an answer from Conte, I said, Joe Rodon obviously wasn't in the squad again against Brentford. Will he get more game time with Christian Romero being out injured? To which he kind of and then he said, not really, because I see him as being the backup for Eric Dyer. And it was like another cha-ching moment. But not cha-ching for Joe Rodon, because obviously it limits his options. And Eric Dyer, as I say, is playing well, and he's a senior figure in that defence now. I think it's probably a little harsh on Joe Rodon. I think Joe Rodon can play on that right-hand side, and I'd imagine he could play on the left-hand side. I've certainly seen him bring the ball out before. Could he do it to the attacking degree that Ben Davies does? Probably not. I do think Ben Davies kind of holds all the cards in that kind of hybrid role. But yeah, no, I thought that was interesting. He said, I've got 2 players for every position in mind, and for Joe, it's that central position with Eric Dyer. So, it's when Eric Dyer gets a rest or gets injured, essentially, that's when Joe Rodon comes in, and depends whether that's enough for him. Joe Rodon, I think, would be quite open to a loan move in January, but whether that can happen with Romero's injury, Romero might not be back till, January, February, who knows? It's a tough one for Joe Rodon. I do feel for him, because I've said before, I don't really think he's done that much wrong, but just doesn't seem to be getting the nod from any of these managers, really, apart from that little end to the Mourinho tenure. They're just not kind of letting him have those chances, really. So that was about Joe Rodon. Oliver Skipp appreciation moment. I'm a big fan of Oliver Skipp, and that comes from having seen him come through the academy and watch a lot of him in academy football. So I knew what Spurs were going to get eventually. And I just loved the fact that Thursday night I asked Conte about him, and his answer was brilliant. It was a really good answer. Rather than a gushing, oh yes, Oliver Skipp's wonderful kind of thing, I'm going to buy my laminated membership card from Alistair Gold. It was actually an answer kind of mixed praise with real kind of, I want to see this and I will improve him. I will bring this to his game. It was really interesting. Essentially saying that, Skipp just he wants to work on him, what he does with the ball in that moment before, like kind of having that little bit of vision to know exactly what you do next with the ball when you get it. Because that's the thing. Skipp has been fantastic in winning the ball back, and he has been launching Spurs on counterattacks, but sometimes maybe just the decision-making over what pass to pick in that moment, that's something he's got to learn with a little bit of experience. And it was a really fascinating answer. He's very much, and he's very confident, Conte. He's very much like, I will improve him. I'll do this with him and that with him, and we will make him. And he said his exact expression was, Oliver can be a top midfielder. And it's down to him. If he keeps showing the desire he's showing now, he will become a top midfielder. And what I thought was just summed up Oliver Skipp perfectly. So as man of the match against Brentford, has that. Some players might have taken that as, oh, why can't he just praise me? Why is he going to tell me I've got to improve in this and this and that? Oliver Skipp went out there against Norwich. Bang. Man of the match again. He took everything on board. Even from the first minute, he did a driving... first minutes, he did a driving run right through the centre of the Norwich midfield. And I kind of ironically, it was like this kind of image you saw of Billy Gilmore, who's essentially the Oliver Skipp of this year for Norwich, kind of flailing in his wake, trying to grab him, and as he was going away from him. Ultimately, his shot wasn't great. It was just kind of a low kind of rolling shot. But just everything he did was so, so good on the day. Like I say, he was involved in Son's third goal. A nice little perfectly weighted ball back to Ben Davies. And he did. It's not often in the press. Often in the press box, when you hear us going like, ooh, oh, ooh, it's normally about something to say Tongi's done or Sonny's done or Lucas's incredible goal yesterday. But Oliver Skipp got one of those from all of us pretty much. He did this tackle in the first half, and I think he kind of repeated it similarly in the second. It was just incredible. He slid in on a player, like at pace as well, won the ball on the ground, but as he's sliding, somehow contorted his body to pass it back behind him to one of his teammates. I still have no idea how biologically that was possible with his body. It was incredible. And the annoying thing is, in a way, it's one of those moments that it's not going to get shown on Match of the Day. It's not going to get shown on highlights programs because it was in a move that didn't really come to anything. But I think someone clipped it on from some kind of stream or something and put it on Twitter underneath one of my tweet about it. It was just phenomenal, honestly. It showed such high technical ability and thought process in them, quick thinking to do it. And like I say, I think he did another one, if I remember correctly, in the second half that was similar. He's just so good, you know. I mean, here's some of the stats from Oliver Skipp's game, right? Won 100% of his duels on the day. He completed 47 of his 49 passes and had 100% accuracy in the final third. He made 2 interceptions, 2 important clearances, had 2 shots on goal, and this is your anchorman, all-action, powerful, all-tackling midfielder. Did not commit a single foul in the game. You know, it's just such a good young player. And he spoke after the game, spoke really well. Just said, you know, he took everything that Conte said on board. He, you know, obviously very flattering to get the praise side of it, and he knows he wants to continue to improve. He feels, first bit of time, he's very, very modest. It was the first kind of moment he actually admitted a little bit of praise for himself. He said, I do feel like I've improved a lot. And I think regular football does that. You know, Premier League football is going to do that to you. Obviously, the year at Norwich was huge for him last year. But, yeah, and he was also asked about, whether it could be time for an England call-up soon, whether he believes he can reach that. I wouldn't say he's as far off as people, people from other clubs may be thinking, like, who's Oliver Skipp? But I don't think, never underestimate how much the England setup also revolves around the England under-21s. And Skipp is now a key player. He's a big leader in that under-21s team. And, Gareth Southgate, having come from the under-21s as well himself as the former manager of them, he knows very well. There's a very close link. So you get an injury maybe in the next squad, or maybe he just wants to have a look at him in himself, without having to kind of replace someone. I think Skipp will maybe get a chance in that England squad before the season's out, just for him to have a look at him. And if he continues on the trajectory he's on, who knows what can happen, honestly. I'm such a big Oliver Skipp fan. I think he's so good. It's like when I see people saying, oh, he's just another, whatever, Tom Carroll, Harry Winks, sideways pass, or whatever they want to use against him. I just think, are you watching? I felt he was the dominant midfield force yesterday. I actually thought Pierre-Emile Højbjerg kind of, not quite shrunk into the background, but very much at times Skipp looked like the more experienced dominant player in the midfield. I thought he was that good. Yeah, and he's bulked up. You look at Skippy, and he's been like really working his physique last season, and also in the summer when he was injured. And you can see now it's very difficult to get him off the ball, and he will like shoulder to shoulder with other players, and he will win those kind of duels. He's very, 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 very much beefed up physically, and not in a kind of slow him down, like a tank trying to turn away. It is proper kind of athletic physicality as well. So a great game from Skippy. Really, really good. Lucas Moura. Got to talk about Lucas Moura, of course. His goal was incredible. It was an absolutely incredible goal. The build-up was almost as nice as the finish itself. Touched it around the player, ran around the other side, as he loves to do that. Linked up with Sonny, who did a lovely little touch back into his path. He kind of brought it inside and just arrowing shot into the top corner, top left. And that's kind of the way Lucas is. He admitted himself in the interview afterwards. He said, I'm not a killer, he said, like Kane and Sonny. I don't score, a lot of goals. And I think that's the thing with Lucas is he's a scorer of great goals, not a great goal scorer. And quite surprisingly, I should before I go into the other side of it, I want to say he had a terrific game. Lucas was terrific yesterday. Everything he touched worked. Every little back heel flick was great. I had a stat I wanted to pull up because in the Brentford game, I gave him a little bit of criticism in a piece I wrote because his passing accuracy was 53.6%. That's almost half his every pass was off target and went to the opposition. Whereas yesterday it was 85.7% against Norwich, which is a huge upgrade. It was so much better. But you can't get away from the fact that that incredible goal was his first goal in 10 months in the Premier League, since February. It's a long, long time ago. And Conte, after the game, he could have just praised him again. This is what I like about Conte. He doesn't just do false praise or gushing praise for the sake of it, or just kind of sound bites. He says very honestly what he thinks. And he said, I want to get this right, I think he scored an amazing goal, but he has the quality to score more goals, and he has to score more goals than the rest of the season. We need this type of situation. He's very good, I think. In front, we have great quality with important strikers. Lucas has great quality, and surely my expectation is to see much more goals like this, but a good performance with and without the ball. I think that said it all. You know, Lucas is an important player in terms of his work rate, his attitude. He's a very popular guy in the dressing room, and you know, I think if you're looking to change a game, he is someone that can turn a match in an instant. He does have that. And he's an exciting, direct, fast winger, and the fans love those kind of players. They get a little bit more leeway maybe than other players. You know, we spoke about the likes of Ben Davies or Davinson Sanchez, those people who, if you make a mistake, you're a bit stuffed because it probably leads to a goal. Whereas someone like Lucas Moura, who I just said, half of his passes on Thursday night went to opposition players. Yeah, I remember after that game getting people telling me that he'd been one of the best players on the pitch and he's been one of Tottenham's best players this season and things like that. And it's a bit like, no, he hasn't. He hasn't. But the perception of it is that because he tries incredibly hard and he's a great worker, you're always believing in him kind of thing. You see what I mean? It's a strange one. But wingers have always got this. I used to be the same when I was young. Players like Jose Dominguez, they would excite you to be like, but actually when you analyse it, maybe it didn't do so much. But with Lucas and his stats, I pulled them up after this one. In 116 Premier League appearances for Tottenham, this was Lucas's 18th goal. And in all that time, for a winger, someone that's obviously meant to be creating stuff, 11 assists. He should, and this is with the utmost respect that I'm saying this, I think his talent deserves bigger numbers. I do. I like Lucas a lot. As I've said before, a great guy to interview. He's fascinating. And I think sometimes his work before the final third is important as well. And obviously you don't see the numbers for that. But I think, and now Conte is saying it, so little old me doesn't matter anymore. Antonio Conte is actually saying it. He should be scoring more goals and laying on more assists for the quality that he has. But incredible goal. Had us all like, wow, that was a wow moment at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It was probably one of the best goals scored there since, it was opened in 2009. Fantastic goal. It really was. In terms of his other attacking players, Harry Kane, another one of those funny performances. He's definitely working hard. A lot of his touches were really nice, kind of in what he was trying to do. There was one he brought down over a player's head. It was a lovely touch. But it just isn't happening for him in front of goal. It's really weird. It's like almost the opposite with Sonny. Sonny maybe isn't quite... Sometimes his touch just out of the box isn't quite right or something. But he's still there bringing important moments. Goal and an assist yesterday. Lovely goal. Lovely finish. The assist obviously for Lucas. But also it was his corner. He was involved in all three goals. And this is the thing at the moment is that Kane... He's just not able to do it in those big moments. And that's just maybe a confidence issue. I don't know. But yeah, for him, it's just not quite translating. He had the shot, obviously, that led to the corner that was Sanchez's goal came from. But yeah, just Son is at the moment making the bigger impact on matches. But Kane, as Conte keeps calling him, is his reference point up front. He needs him up front. He actually said, I cannot drop him from any of the matches over the festive schedule because... they don't have another player who does that. And again, that's a failing of the transfers. But there you go. What else do I want to talk about? Substitutes, yes. Really delighted for Ryan Sessegnon. It obviously came out of a bad situation for Sergio Reguilon, who came off after 20 minutes. Thankfully, Conte said afterwards, they think it's not really a serious injury at all. Even Reguilon, I think, tweeted that he'd be back in a few days. Whether he's back in time for Thursday when Sessegnon is suspended against Rennes, it's going to be an interesting one. But there you go, we'll see. But Sessegnon came on, and you know what? I think he did well. He did well. It wasn't incredible. He wasn't bad. He did, I'd say well is probably, that's the expression Conte used. You know, he got a lot of praise from Conte afterwards. Conte really likes Sessegnon. He thinks he's got an incredibly high ceiling, which I agree with, in terms of what he can become. He came on, and what was lovely to see is a player with hamstring problems in the past. Maybe there's a reticence to suddenly put yourself out there, suddenly sprint, suddenly do these quick, sudden moments. And Sessegnon didn't, which was a big thing. There was a couple of times when he pushed the ball past the player, his defender, and he ran past them. And he got a few low crosses in. There was one early on where he hit it behind Son and Lucas, which wasn't great. There was another one that was really dangerous, went right across everyone. I think, I'm trying to remember who it was. Someone just couldn't quite get their toe on it. It might have even been Davies, which kind of says everything about that overlapping centre-back role, doesn't it? But no, it was good from Sessegnon. You know, Conte said he can do much more, and he will improve him, he said. But yeah, he's got high hopes. You listen to him talk, you can tell with Conte, it's very clear which players he believes can be very big for him. And he believes Skip can be a top midfielder. And Sessegnon, he says, you know, he can be really some player. I think this whole change of system is huge for Sessegnon, you know, because it suddenly puts him into competition as the second choice against Reguilon. And it's such a demanding role, the wing-back role. You know, you are essentially a defender and an attacker, and you've got to be box, box, box. But you're sprinting. Sprints and distance covered must be incredible. So those players are not going to be able to play every match. So Sessegnon will get game time. And I think it was quite key as well after, you know, his exuberance, let's call it, in Slovenia and getting himself sent off. Clearly, Conte has just thought, well, you know, that's what it was. It was a very young player getting overexcited and doing something a bit daft. Just happy to be back. So it gave him his chance again, brought him straight on. You know, he could have gone safe, could have played Doherty maybe on the left-hand side, but he didn't. Brought Sessegnon on, and I thought he did well. He did. And it's a shame he's suspended on Thursday, because he probably would have started. But, you know, perhaps if Reguilon is able to play on Thursday, maybe Sessegnon plays at Brighton. We'll see. But he will get game time, especially over this busy schedule. And I think that's great. I thought Matt Doherty came on and did well. He was only on for about half an hour. Japhet Tanganga, it was real kind of, I think when we saw he was at right wing back, it was very much like, oh, Matt Doherty, that's not great for you. Doherty, sorry. I think I meant to be saying it Doherty. You know I'm going to pronounce stuff wrong. But yeah, for him to come on, for Japhet Tanganga to play there, it was very much like, oh dear, that's not great news for Matty boy. But as it was, I thought Tanganga actually struggled a bit in the role, not only attacking-wise, but he actually got kind of beaten quite easily for pace down his side, and they brought Doherty on, and I thought he brought a lot of balance to the team. He looked much better. He looked quite confident, which was good as well. He played a nice ball with the outside of his foot across the outside of the box to Kane, which resulted in the shot that subsequently brought the corner that Sanchez scored from. And I thought he did well. You know, it was only half an hour, and again, you'll have people saying, "Oh, standard of opposition wasn't good enough." Oh. But I thought he did well. And even Steven Bergwijn came on in the final minutes, and I thought he actually was quite bright. And then typically, the way fate works, got an injury right at the end. There was a quite a rough challenge on him where I can't remember. I think it was actually the player. I think it was the chap. Is it Williams? The chap from Man United. I think he was on loan there at Norwich, and his shin pad flew off. It was that kind of tackle, and you could just see Bergwijn was. It was that classic one of I'm injured, but I'm going to stay on because we've used all our subs. Please don't pass me the ball. Oh, everyone's passing me the ball, and it was like, oh. He actually did a really nice touch, I think, while not being able to move properly. But I just hope it's not a bad one. I hope that he's kind of just something that maybe has a little bit of swelling, but I think he needs to be able to play Thursday. I think that's quite a big game for him, really, to show Conte what he can do as well with prolonged minutes on the pitch. But yeah, all three subs did well. Conte praised all three, actually. He said all three came on and did well. So, yeah, that was good. Conte himself, I wanted to talk about him a little bit. He got the love. He got the love from the fans. It was in the second half, the "Everywhere We Go" chant has kind of been repurposed for Antonio, and it goes on. And you could see that was the first time. I think it's been heard in little clumps before, but this was the whole stadium in unison. I think Spurs were 3-0 up at that point, and it was a nice moment for him. You could see, and he kind of turned to all corners, and he did applause, and they did it again about only a couple of minutes later, maybe 5 minutes at the most later, and he applauded them all again. At the final whistle, he applauded all four corners, and he's got the luxury of having that backing from the start. It's funny, isn't it, how Mourinho came in and there was a certain section of the fan base who were never really going to forgive him as the former Chelsea boss. And obviously Nuno wasn't really around long enough to really inspire anyone, unfortunately. But Conte has come in and the Chelsea past is not a thing. I think it's maybe just it's the perfect moment. I think Spurs fans needed a saviour in a way, and he has come in as this serial title winner, a guy that is very much currently one of the best managers out there. And yeah, he's kind of got the Spurs fans eating out of his hand at the moment, which is great for a manager because it allows more patience for what he's got to do. You know, he's made team selections that had it been another manager, you know, the fans would have probably rioted. It allows him to, really build a solid base and that foundation he keeps talking about. And also, with them behind him, it shines a light on the transfer window next month and also in the summer. And if he doesn't get what he wants and there's any kind of, maybe results go downhill or whatever, the fans will not point to him. Everything will be shining upon those above. And that's, it's a big thing that he's won the fans over so early. He was very modest after. He said it was lovely. He said, but I don't deserve it yet. He said, I don't. I've only been here a month. I will earn your praise, and I will earn your singing my name. And I thought that was really nice. It was, as I said, I'm going to say this probably a million times, and it's only I haven't seen the angry side of Conte yet. But as of yet, thus far, he speaks so well. Very clever. He's, I always felt with Mourinho, everything was very cleverly thought out before a press conference. He knew what he was going to say. Conte is very emotional. He's kind of the other way, yet also says the right things, which is, I suppose, is a measure of him and the way he is. And I think I've said this before. I think that in game situations, to be able to manage his emotions with his decision making is a huge, huge facet of probably why he's so successful. But yeah, that was, it'll give him a lot of backing in what he does, I think, and behind the scenes as well. And I think, to bring it up to something that I know has been a topic today, when it comes to Hugo Lloris as well, it's going to be quite interesting as well, because as far as I'm aware, Antonio Conte has come in and pretty much essentially been like, what has been allowed to happen to Hugo Lloris? Because you look at it, Hugo Lloris is Spurs' most decorated player. He's probably their most consistent player over recent years. His contract ends in 6 months' time, just over. He will be able to, next month, speak to foreign clubs about leaving on a free transfer in the summer. How? How has that been allowed to happen? It is, Hugo Lloris' last contract was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And it had no option for an extra season. It was a 5.5-year deal, which takes us up to the summer of 2022. And just in the meantime, where I believe there's been a couple of offers made to him, just nothing really suitable. The biggest problem at Tottenham they've had this policy, and other clubs do it. I think Chelsea do it as well. There's been a real reluctance to give big contracts to anyone over 30. Spurs' profile is very much about building from young players, turning into stars, etc. So when players turn 30, there's always been this reluctance to give them any more than maybe a year's contract with an option for another on top, and not normally for big money. Whereas Hugo Lloris obviously will be looking at it and thinking, I'm a World Cup winner. I'm probably the one winner in your team. I've been incredibly consistent. One of the best goalkeepers in the world, probably, top 10, top 15 goalkeepers in the world. And you're not going to pay me what I deserve, or like an improved contract kind of thing. So that contract has just remained as is. And now we're at this stage where I understand there's still no formal offer on the table from Tottenham as he approaches, a few weeks before he can talk. I think it's January the 1st he can talk to other clubs, foreign clubs. So Conte has come in, and from what I'm led to believe, immediately impressed with Lloris. Sees a kindred spirit, sees someone who is a winner. We all remember what he said after the collapse in Zagreb. He tore Tottenham apart. And essentially, and this was a guy who, everything is normally done behind the scenes with Lloris. He's a very good talker behind the scenes, very, calm, calculated, mature guy. But he came out that night in Zagreb and essentially said it's rotten. Everything stinks. The mentality is just not what it was in this club. And it was exactly what Conte believes in everything. And yeah, I understand it. He's come in and he rates Lloris very highly. And although he told us on Friday that he hasn't spoken yet to Lloris about his contract, I'm led to believe that behind the scenes he's making it very clear that he wants Lloris to stay. I think for Lloris now, turns 35 on Boxing Day. He's not declining at all. I can't see it. I think reflexes-wise, he's still superb. Obviously made an early save against Norwich. He had a little iffy kick moment when Dyer gave him the ball in a real rubbish position. But I think overall, I'd say Lloris has, again, had a very consistent season. I do wonder whether the elbow injury he had against Brighton it was towards the end of 2019, wasn't it? It was kind of as the Poch era was unravelling. I just wonder whether the months he had out, he came back in January, didn't he? I just wonder whether those months kind of reset his career, just recharged him. He pretty much played almost every game for Spurs. And I just feel like, I wonder whether that just gave him a pause and let his body heal and let everything... Because I think since that moment he came back, he's probably played some of the best football of his career as a goalkeeper. And for me, it's incredible. I can't see the logic of Spurs not having pushed to get him signed up. Because, Galini was brought in last summer with the potential of becoming a successor. I'd say I don't think Lloris is ready to be succeeded yet. And I'd also say Galini is yet to prove himself. He hasn't really shone. He obviously had a penalty save against Wolves in the Carabao Cup, but he hasn't really... Maybe, you could be fair and say he hasn't had the opportunity so much to do that. But to say he's on a similar level or able to succeed Lloris, I think it's too premature. So I'm intrigued to see what happens now, because Lloris, Spurs are hopeful that they'll get something agreed, and he will commit to a longer stay. He's spoken in the past about wanting to go back to France and see out his career there. I think Nice is the club he wanted to go back to. There's been talk about the MLS as well and a move there at some point. But I'd say that, he's 34 now, to 35 at the end of this month. I don't think he's at the stage now where he can even start winding his career down. I think he's that fit. He's that higher level. I think he could be one of these goalkeepers that plays probably into his 40s. I think he can. I think it needs to get sorted because Conte wants it. This is what I'm saying. I think, I spoke about the 30 contracts for over 30s. I think the problem was Spurs changed this mentality with Toby Alderweireld and Moussa Sissoko. They gave them both, I think, 3-year deal for Alderweireld, was a 4-year maybe, and a 4-year deal in total for Sissoko as well. And they got burned by that. Alderweireld and Sissoko have both now left the club, nominal fees. It's a difficult one because you could probably argue neither felt like the wrong decision at the time, but in hindsight, they ended up paying a lot more to players who then they had to shift. And obviously were on higher or big wages that made it difficult to then move them on for anything other than a low fee. So I wonder whether getting burned by that, Daniel Levy, whether that's maybe influenced, what's happened with Hugo Lloris. But I just feel it's different. It's a different case. Special case goalkeepers are. Hugo Lloris at the end of this contract as well, his current contract, will have been at the club just under a decade. He is Spurs' longest serving player. He's been an put incredible service for the football club. He's been there in the highs of the Poch era, the Champions League final, and then when Spurs were at their lowest ebb in the last couple of years, I think he's been their most consistent player, and he's been trying to drag them back up. And yeah, Poch loved him. Poch used to call him, essentially said he was one of his coaching staff. He was that kind of close to him. Mourinho and Nuno both loved him as well, looked to him to be the guiding voice in the changing room. And Conte has come in and done exactly the same. Winners know winners. They really do. They see their own kind, and that's exactly what Lloris as well. I think for him, he won't have been delighted at the long gap between contracts. A decent offer never having arrived at his door in the last, whatever it is, 5 years. Guys, half a decade. That's ridiculous. And it's up to Tottenham to show that they want him, I guess. It's it really is. It really is. Speaking to some people inside Tottenham, and they really feel that there's this kind of underappreciation for how good Lloris is. It's kind of almost like, you can always just get another goalkeeper. And it's maybe just misunderstanding how good he is. None of the managers have ever felt that way. But I just wonder whether that's been the case when it comes to his contract, that they just kind of felt, you can just get another goalkeeper. And I just think they're kind of failing to understand how important Hugo Lloris is. Sometimes I see people saying, this person should be captain, this person should be captain. Don't underestimate how much of a leader Hugo Lloris is behind the scenes. The players listen to him. He doesn't talk lots, but when he talks, he's one of those guys they listen to. Funnily enough, during the lockdown, when there were no fans inside the stadium, we could hear Lloris shouting it. He is constantly organising them and telling them what to do. There was a moment yesterday, you might have seen it, he came all the way across to talk to Matt Doherty after something. And I think it was a moment, I couldn't tell whether it was criticism or a moment of praise, but whatever it is, from that moment on, Doherty was absolutely settled and he was very, very good. And it's little things like that maybe sometimes we miss. And yeah, I hope he stays. I think he's terrific. I really do. And I can't see who Spurs could replace him with without spending huge amounts of money, which probably is better spent elsewhere. I'm sure those who play, Football Manager and FIFA and all that will tell me all these wonder kids and players that they should go for. But in the real world, I do think you'd struggle to replace him, and that money needs to go elsewhere. Get him signed up, get him attached to that football club for longer because he deserves it as well. Before I go, I just have a very quick loan roundup because I did one of those a couple of weeks ago and people responded quite positively. They wanted to know what's happening with the players. I've had Janelle Bennett has come back from Crewe Alexandra, a young, very talented young winger. I think he's 19. He unfortunately picked up an ankle injury, did his ligaments, which is going to keep him out for unfortunately about 10 to 12 weeks. So he's come back to Hotspur Way. I actually saw him walking in the other day while I was sat waiting for the press conference. So he's come back. Alfie Whiteman will be coming back shortly because he's now finished his loan. The season in Sweden has finished. He had a successful time. Pretty much played, I think it was about 12, 13 games in a row in between the sticks and with the rest of the team. Degerfors he was playing for, he kept them up. Is it the Allsvenskan? I can't remember how you pronounce it. But the Swedish top flight. Essentially, the third from bottom team has to play a playoff to stay in the league against the team from below, from the league below. But Degerfors managed to finish from bottom with a batting. I think they had a win on the last day against Oster. I can't remember. But yes, so essentially he had a successful season. He will now return to Tottenham, as Brandon Austin did, having played first team football, which is huge for especially goalkeepers. It's very difficult to get a goalkeeper a loan move where they play regular football. It sounds a lot easier than it actually is, especially for young goalkeepers. Kian Atete has been playing very well recently for Northampton. He's got a hamstring injury at the moment, which he's getting treatment both at Hotspur Way and also with Northampton. So I think he's there for the season. Be interesting to see whether in January maybe Spurs have a little look at, because he's doing so well and he's scoring, getting goals, whether they use, often in these loans they have a recall clause, and whether they look at maybe putting him at a higher level than League Two. it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But he's doing really well, progressing well. I was reading some quotes from their manager who was raving about how he's doing, which is great. That's all you want from young players. Troy Parrott hasn't had such a good week. He unfortunately, right towards the end of their MK Dons EFL Trophy game against Leyton Orient, he got himself sent off. Got provoked a bit, had another guy winding him up essentially. I think he may have even used his hands, and Troy kind of lent in with his head, got himself sent off, and his manager wasn't very happy with him at all, so it was a bit of a lack of discipline. I think he's going to be fortunate in the fact that I think suspension in the EFL Trophy only applies to that competition. So it won't. I think it's the one competition where it doesn't mean he'll get a suspension in others, but it was a straight red so as well. So he'll miss 3 games in that competition. But yeah, so he'll be back. He needs to get a little bit more minutes. He's had kind of little things and bits and pieces, international duty, and then he was out. The exact expression was keeping with COVID guidelines. He missed a couple of games with that. So he just now needs to get back to kind of playing, getting minutes under his belt for MK Dons, and hopefully learn from that red card as well. Who else have we got? Oh, Cameron Carter-Vickers. Cameron Carter-Vickers is having a terrific season with Celtic. He really is. I always, when I do my loan roundups that I do on our website, I also kind of try to look at a lot of the views and player ratings from those who watch them week in, week out. And yeah, I read a piece in, I think it was Football.Scotland, did a piece in their player ratings. They said just what a brilliant loan he's proved to be. He's been one of their kind of signings of the season. He's just been so confident there. He's having a great season. I think he got an assist. I think they beat Dundee United maybe 3-0 Celtic. And he's just been, I think they've got an option to buy him as well. And I'd be shocked if they don't. And yeah, fair play to him. He's gone away and done well. Jamie Bowden, he's at Oldham. They're having a tough season, Oldham, in League Two, but he's getting a lot of game time, playing a lot of football, and that's crucial for his development. This is his first loan move, and just to get first team senior minutes is huge. We've seen with Oliver Skipp, and even Ryan Sessegnon went away, didn't he? I know he played a lot of football for Fulham before, but just his season on loan at Hoffenheim was big for him as well. And I think for the likes of Jamie Bowden, who I think he's 20, that's good for him for the future as well, and just playing a career for himself in a professional game. Pape Matar Sarr, he's obviously Spurs summer signing who went back to Metz for the season. He's got a kind of a strange format at the moment where he's starting one match, on the bench the next, starting the next, on the bench again after that. And he's kind of not really getting a lot of regularity. Maybe because he's young, he's only 19, he's very versatile, plays in various positions, but it also doesn't help that Metz are having a tough season. I think they've only won, it's either 1 or 2 games, having a very difficult time, and they're getting tonked in a fair few matches as well. So it isn't the great... In one hand, to use a Conte expression, in one hand, it's not the greatest kind of environment for a young player to develop and hone his skills, but on the other hand, it's quite good mentally to be involved in a relegation battle and all of the kind of the demands that places on you. So, this is a big year for him to kind of develop, but also obviously learn English and just prepare for his move next summer to Tottenham. Whether there's a recall clause in January, I'm not actually sure on that one because it was part of a transfer deal rather than a standard send out on loan. I still think probably for him it's better for him just as a very young man to continue to learn there and come next summer. But yeah, that's all the loan players now. It's just a 6 with Janil coming back, and it'll be 5 when Alfie Whiteman comes back. I'm sure more will join them in January. Harvey White needs a loan. He really does. He had a good loan at Portsmouth last season. Just been put in the nominees for Player of the Month in Premier League 2. He's just, apparently his numbers and he's running up in that. He's far too good for that level of football. So is Dylan Markanday. I think he probably needs a loan. Jack Clark's an interesting one. Jack Clark's been playing as a striker recently for the development squad. Scored. They beat Man City 3-0. It was Niall John scored a couple of crackers. Jack Clark scored a nice kind of poacher's goal as well. He's probably not the most natural striker, but it's a role that he's taking on. And you'd imagine he'll get a loan in January as well. So I think if I do continue to do these loan roundups of me. If you want them, you can tell me. If it's not really what interests you, I know some people only care about the first team. They don't care about the younger players, and that's fine. There's different ways to support your club and be a fan. But yeah, there'll be a big number of loan players in the second half of the season, I'd imagine, which would be interesting for Wayne Burnett, the development squad manager, because he's got to put out a team that competes, but also he knows that these players also need to develop, and that can include loan moves, and so his team becomes younger and younger. And then you see people going, oh, they're doing rubbish and develop, sack the boss of the under-23s. And it's often because he hasn't got the players, because he's got a younger players who he's trying to improve, but they're playing against maybe older teams. It's very complicated at that level, which is why it's really difficult to look at results in academy football. And maybe it shouldn't be guided by that. But there you go. I think that's pretty much covered everything I was going to cover today. Obviously, press conference on Wednesday ahead of Rennes. It'll be a player and Conte, so it'll be interesting to see who they put up. I'm intrigued to see who plays at left wing back. Whether it is Ben Davies goes into that role, or whether Reguilon's fit, or I don't know, Matt Doherty plays on that side. I should stress Emerson Royal and Brian Hill were both ill. They weren't able to play yesterday. So whether they're available or not for Thursday is another thing. I'm intrigued to see how strong he goes team-wise. And then we've got Brighton on Sunday. Brighton they could potentially be without 9 injured players for that match, which, I know they've got some real defensive issues going on. So, in the normal world, you'd say, oh, that's a great thing for Tottenham, but we know what Tottenham do. And if there's an opportunity or a gift out there for them, they don't take it. But yeah, we'll see. I shall be making the trip there, obviously down to Bournemouth as well. Brighton. I don't want to go to Bournemouth. I won't be watching Spurs playing at Bournemouth. Yeah, lots of matches to come. There's honestly every 3 to 4 days we'll have matches, and I shall try to keep with you on these and get these videos out there as much as I can. I try to stick to one a week so you don't get sick of my face, but lots of football to come. Hopefully Tottenham keep improving and we'll have lots of positive stuff to talk about. I have some people sometimes say, oh, can't you do these in 10, 15 minutes? I don't think I could fit everything I cover in 10, 15 minutes. I appreciate that the attention spans of, in the modern world maybe aren't quite the same. And people sometimes do like bite-sized stuff, but, I've never kind of fooled you guys or said anything different from the start. This was always just going to be me sitting there with my raw stream of consciousness talking about Tottenham Hotspur, and I think I'd struggle to kind of the amount I hopefully cover for you guys. I don't think I could put them into 10, 15 minutes worth of video. But I should say that's a minority. People are very, very nice about my videos. It's very kind of you, and I appreciate it. And people that I see when I'm walking to the stadium, or they shout across at me to the press area when I'm in the stadium, it's lovely. Honestly, it's all hugely appreciated. It's lovely to know that there are people, or hopefully quite a few people that enjoy these, and I enjoy doing them, and hopefully that comes across as well. So I shall head off. I shall catch you next time. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall talk to you later. Goodbye.